Hello, everybody. I'm Carla Garapedian, and this is the Arts and Entertainment segment. I want to say thank you very much to AWA for this event so far. It's been so invigorating to hear all of the panelists and to also hear the questions from the audience. And I also want to thank them for organizing this panel in particular because I'm not sure, but it may be one of the first times that women in entertainment are talking about women in entertainment to women, Armenian women. So we've had a chance by email and in person amongst us to talk about some of the issues, and it's going to be a little less structured this session. First, I'm going to set the scene from my own point of view, throw out a couple of issues and trends, and then we'll go to each of the panelists and get them to respond or raise whatever issues they think are important, and then have a little conversation amongst ourselves and then open it up to questions. And we hope that you will be as invigorating as you were in the previous sessions. I am a director and a producer, and I've noticed, working in both Britain and the United States, that actually there are quite a few, especially in Britain, women producers, but not that many women directors. And that's a trend which I wouldn't say is paralleled here in the United States. We could talk about that. Directing a film often means getting a lot more confidence of the people who are financing you, and there has been a trend, maybe women directors are more risky, and so the money doesn't necessarily come as easily to projects, movies that are have women as directors. When we talk about entertainment, of course, we're not just talking about the film industry, we're talking about television. More and more, we're talking about forms of social media and branding. We're talking about even the services that help support the entertainment industry, people in the legal profession, entertainment lawyers, very important. We're talking about agents. And in all of these fields, there have been Armenian women, all of them. You may not hear about them, but they're there. I think the reason we're having this panel is because there have been some Armenian women who've become, perhaps through their projects and films, more prominent. And so we have the perception that Armenian women are doing rather well in the entertainment industry. So one question, and I'll introduce our panelists in a moment, but one question might be, are Armenian women doing better in entertainment? And more generally, are women doing better in entertainment? Because we're a subset of women. Or is this something that's really just a perception? Maybe things are actually getting worse. That's one question. What is the status of women in the creative and business world of entertainment? Do women make a difference in the stories that are told? And is the business of entertainment changing? Those are the questions that we thought were important to answer. A session on arts and entertainment would be remiss if there weren't some name dropping. So I'm gonna go there. I just came off of working on The Promise, a large budget feature film, which has been in the making for some years. And I had lots of interesting jobs. I was the token Armenian to look after all things Armenian, cultural and historical, dialect, language, how to dress the dead bodies on the massacre scene, how the vultures should fly over the dead bodies. I had many interesting questions to address. The most interesting was in briefing the lead actors. And one of the lead actors, whose name I shall not mention, but is resident in Britain, met me and Maggie Mangasarian, who some of you may know, who runs the Ararat Eskijan Museum in Los Angeles. He wanted to go to this museum to see Armenian artifacts, Armenian history, to the extent that you could put your hand on something or look at something. And so I advised him to go to the Ara Tuskegee Museum because in Los Angeles, that's one of our places. So I met him there. And he quizzed Maggie and myself for 3.5 hours about all things to do not only with the Armenian genocide, but Armenian culture, Turks, denial. And at the end of this, with Maggie Mangasarian and Carla Garabedian sitting directly opposite this gentleman, he asked, "Can you tell me, what do Armenian women look like?" Now, I have to say that we are a diverse population. We do look a little differently from one another, but Maggie is about 4'10", and I'm 5'1", and she's from Marash, and I'm a Sapastia Vanetsi girl, and I don't think, I looked at him and I said, "Who do you think we are?" There's not really a lesson there, except to say that for most of my career, being an Armenian has been the X factor, the X factor. First of all, I don't really think that I play the woman card, let alone the Armenian woman card, but there have been occasions where it's worked to my advantage. And sometimes I've learned this long after. Being a woman, and something that I'd like to throw out to the women here on the panel, to what extent is it helpful? We talk about obstacles and challenges, but to what extent is it helpful to be a woman? Earlier, we heard about management skills, leadership skills, how women may be remiss or challenged, but also how they may be different and advantaged. So in the entertainment industry, one question, to what extent is being a woman advantageous or adds maybe an X factor or something different, adds a different value, more value? That's one of the questions. And before I introduce you to the panel, I'm going to give you one more name to drop. In 2014, there was a banquet in Los Angeles that Steven Spielberg hosted, where President Obama was going to be honored. This was a Shoah Foundation banquet, and it was my idea that because President Obama was going to be there, and because the room was going to be full of industry executives, very high level, like not only the stars, but the industry executives, and that event would be covered in the entertainment industry, that we should do something that would get coverage. And so I thought, what if we get an Armenian genocide survivor to be seated as a guest at one of the tables, and therefore would have to be recognized from the stage? And what if I sit her next to somebody extremely famous who has maybe 60 million people following her on Twitter? And what if we use, and I'm mentioning this because this is the power of celebrity, an aspect of our business that we always are playing with, fighting against, using the power of celebrity. And what if this woman were briefed when she was asked, "Why are you here?" She answered, "I'm here to support the Armenian Genocide Testimonies Collection, the Armenian genocide survivors who are here in the Spielberg Shoah Foundation collection. I'm here to support the Armenian Genocide Collection." So all those things happened. The only thing that went wrong, we got the 100-year-old survivor from the Ararat home. We got the man in the van to take her with her wheelchair. We got her granddaughter and the Ararat home executive. We got Kim Kardashian and her husband and her publicist and somebody to pay for the $1,500 a ticket for all those 7 people. So we got all of those things. The only hitch was Mrs. Salibian, the survivor, who said, "But Carla, President Obama's a Muslim. I don't want to be around any Muslims." So I said, Mrs. Salebian, and now I'm arguing with an Armenian genocide survivor. I said, Mrs. Salebian, I can assure you he goes to church. Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. Well, how about that? The end of the story is, and this is where I'm gonna then toss to our panel. No, unfortunately, she died last year. The end of the story is, this is the power of movies, celebrities, entertainment, whatever umbrella you want to call it, that night, Kim Kardashian tweeted live, I am sitting next to an Armenian genocide survivor. And it went around the world and back. And Conan O'Brien and Sona Movsesian, who works for Conan O'Brien, came over to the table, recognized her from the stage, but came over to the table and spoke to her. And afterwards, Conan went to Armenia. Thank you, Sona. And then Kim Kardashian said, and I have to say to you, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I want our panelists to talk. I have to say to you, there were Armenians at that event who did not want to be near Kim Kardashian. They scattered like mice. I walked up with her, they scattered. They scattered. Why, you may ask? That we can talk about that later. But Kim wanted to go to Armenia. She didn't know how. The next year was going to be 2015. And so Harut Sassounian, I introduced to Kim Kardashian, and the next year, Kim Kardashian went to Armenia. And look what happened when she did that. That's the power of celebrity. Okay, it's reality television. Is it the kind of entertainment we want to promote? But that's what happened. So let me first, I don't want you to look in the pamphlet because everybody is described in the pamphlet. But we have on our panel Sona Movsesian, who is the executive assistant to Conan O'Brien. We have, thank you, Anush Yemenidjian, who is the manager of event marketing for The Hollywood Reporter. We have Tenny Melodonian, who is the managing director of publicity and corporate communications for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And last but certainly not least, Nora Armani, who does a number of things. I'm going to mention two. The Socially Relevant Film Festival, and she has a new digital project called ARC. Is it ARC-K or ARC? ARC, which I hope she'll mention. Let me start with you, Tenny. Tenny, the Academy's been in the news a lot in the last year. I feel very sorry for you because of the issue of women and if there are enough women in entertainment. Tell us a little bit about this.
Sure, I would love to. First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. It's such an honor to be here this weekend and spend time with everyone. It's so empowering. Yes, we have been in the news a lot, and it's honestly been a blessing, even in the challenging times. But I'm going to pose a question. So on Oscar Sunday, when you're all sitting there watching the show, as I hope you will be in February, and an Oscar winner is on stage, and she's accepting her statuette and is emotional and excited, and she's thanking the Academy. And I hope you know that she's thanking 7,000 of the most accomplished filmmakers in the world. And of those 7,000 filmmakers, what percentage do you think are women? A little higher than that. It's 26%. So, yeah. 26% are women, one of which is the fantastic Catherine Serafian. So yes. But that is pretty sad, right? That's really, really sad, and there's a lot of work to be done there. It was 24% the year before. So the 3% gain is incredible in 1 year, and that is a lot of work that was done in just 1 year to get up to 3%. That's a huge number, 3% jump. But there was an instrumental amount of work that was done over the past 5 years to even reach 26%. There's been an incredible amount of movement because of that hashtag Oscar So White, as everyone knows. And the point of that hashtag was because of one category, and that's the acting category. And for 2 years, it's been pretty much all white for 20 actors across the board. But our movement has been beyond race. We became pretty much race relations central at the Academy. But the work that we've done, it's not just about race. It's about diversity across the board, about nationality, but definitely about gender. So as we know, in just directing across Hollywood, only 4% of movies are directed by women, which is pretty pathetic. So our movement is to get opportunities to open all across the fields in every category that movies represent, from directing to writing to acting, but also in like costume design and animation and sound effects and visual effects that are usually very dominated by male. So whatever opportunities that we can create, our CEO and our president have really been working with the entire industry, the entire casting directors, production companies, the studios that pretty much greenlight everything, decision-making processes that Catherine was talking about earlier, getting people in the pipeline early that have the decision-making processes to really influence who is lined up to take, the next project, who is, being mentored, who is being pushed up the line. So what we've done is we've created these conversations. The challenges that we were faced with in really basically putting us in that spotlight, we had to take action. So going kind of back about 5 years, when our CEO came into her role, she pretty much had this 89-year-old institution that was so ingrained in an old kind of, boys network that was run by pretty much a board, not so much resistant to change, but didn't know how to change. And the job that I had with a few key team members was to pretty much help her get a network around her, both with key board members and key influencers around town that would help push these initiatives. And by doing that, we had key voices. Again, I'm going to Catherine, with her boss, John Lasseter, helped her navigate some of those strategies that put a lot of these pieces together that help propel these changes. So that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier in the first panel. I think Ani brought it up with the White House and Obama's team and how those women kind of collaborated together and really helped engage and push ideas forward. That's kind of what my CEO had to do with help around, with not just women, but men coming together to push ideas forward, especially when there are traditions that are so ingrained. And it wasn't really about sexism, but it was really about how there are institutions such as the Academy and the industry that are so ingrained that you've got almost like a big ship or a Titanic that just is set course, and you want to shift it, and it takes a lot of momentum. And when you've got an industry like the Academy or the Hollywood that you think is so progressive, and you think that 26% women, my God, they should be at 50% women, but they're not, because it's all about who you know, and people hire their immediate circles. When people make movies, they only really look around, I've worked with this director, I've worked with this camera crew, I've worked with this lighting crew, and I'm just going to team up with these people. But it's really looking beyond your circle. And that's what we're encouraging.
Nora, I'm just wondering what you think about that.
Oh, yes, it's very, very difficult, because the idea of helping each other and bringing in each other, or stretching a hand and saying, okay, come on board, as a woman who's already in the industry, helping another Armenian woman, which is a double minority situation here. You're a woman and a minority, is a huge amount of work. But it also has to do with how do we change the industry and the mentalities, because we know, all of us, we know that when a film gets to be funded, there's a lot more inclination to fund it with the investors and funders and all those people when it's a male director than if it's a female director. And this is the mentality that one needs to be able to change. And as far as women directors, there are a number in Hollywood, but they are the celebrity names that have made themselves famous as actresses, and they have the drawing, and they are being brought in not because they are talented directors. Maybe some are, I'm not saying they're not, but they are being brought in because of the name they represent. And just like Carla said, it is a celebrity industry. It's visibility, it's image, that's what this whole ball game is about. Personally, I must say that I have been very much inspired by my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was the daughter of a priest in Kayseri in Armenia, in Turkey. Eastern Turkey and Eastern Armenia, Western, whatever. Very bad in geography. And she was a survivor of the Armenian genocide. And she told me all these stories. And every single one of these stories would make a movie. Short, documentary, long, feature, anything, you name it, it would be possible to do it. I grew up in Egypt in an Armenian family, and from a very early age, I was very much into acting, and I still act. Even though I do so many different things, I find the time to do movies. In fact, I did a couple this year. One of them is a short and one is a feature that is still ongoing. As an actress, have nothing to do with the production side. And then I went to London, where I did my master's degree in sociology at the London School of Economics. But throughout this whole period, I was acting. So the acting went always in parallel with the sociology and the social consciousness about what is there to be done. As a woman, I can very well say that in my family, I never felt discriminated against, except lately my dad said something. God bless his soul. He just passed away recently. He said, you know, when you were born, and I'm the first child, I'm going to be emotional now because he just passed away. But he said, you know, when you were born, your grandfather said, this one is better than a son. And I thought, I said, what kind of thing is that to say? Is that shall I take it as a compliment, or shall I say my poor brother, he feels like secondhand now, you know, because second class, because I'm the one who's anyway. But that's not what he meant. Of course, what he meant to say is that you didn't disappoint us, you didn't, you know, whatever way you want to take it, which I take it from a positive point of view. It's not because I want to be a guy, I want to be a man, but because it means that the opportunities are there if we are just there to seize them. And a lot of times we set the limitations to ourselves. And we need to take that mindset. We need to unscrew our head, put it aside, and take the head that says, you can do it all. You know, get in front of the mirror every morning. And affirmation is very, very important. It's what it's very important. From here to here is a very short distance. If I keep saying I'm stupid, I'm untalented, I can't do it, I'm Armenian, I'm a woman, all those things, eventually I'm going to believe those things, and I will let those things set the tone of the way I act and behave. And then, of course, the way I behave, it will reflect back, and that's what people will perceive, and that's how I will be. I will become what I am believing that I am. If I reverse that and I say, I can do it, there's nothing to stop me. I mean, of course, there's a limit, because when we first go from that repressed or sort of lack of confidence self to the one that says, oh, I can do it all, we can go overboard. And this time we can become pushy, we can become obnoxious. So it's important to find that excellent balance between the two. And then I went to Los Angeles. Life took me to Los Angeles, the very nice tinsel town. And I lived there for 10 years, and I keep calling it my 10-year sentence. Sorry, ladies, sorry. I was in prison. You're not, but I was. Well, the thing is that I was in my own prison, a lot of it. However, it was different. At the time when I was in Los Angeles, which was from 1981 to 1992, roughly, 91 basically, Hollywood was a completely different ballgame. If you had an accent, if you were ethnic looking, and so on and so forth, forget about it. You could maybe do a little bit something like, if you're a guy, you could play a terrorist part. If you're but or maybe do a background little something or other, or do wallahs and do some voiceover stuff because you speak languages, but you never were offered a chance to audition for anything decent or serious or even under Fiverr. Here now things have changed enormously, tremendously, but still they're not where we would like them to be. With respect to the way it is in Europe, for example, or England, or somewhere like that, so it's completely different. And then I went to Paris. Paris was a completely different ballgame. As an American, now I had to become creative about finding ways of how to obtain the right to work in this country. So somebody said, if you have your own company, you could obtain a foreign businessman visa, and lo and behold, suddenly I create my own film production company, and I don't know zilch about production. Zilch, really, honestly. I didn't even know what TVA was, which is the tax, sales tax. I thought it was somebody's initials or something. So anyway, so I learned the hard way, without any mentorship, without any internship, without any of that. And I did a film, which I was a co-producer on. It was Haifa by Rashid Masharawi, which was a French, Dutch, German, and Palestinian co-production, and I was the French part. And it went to Cannes, to the official selection in Un Certain Regard. And next thing I know, oh my God, I'm a producer. Where's my cigar? So I felt, and then next thing I know is I was getting into the production nitty-gritty and getting further and further away from my acting, which is the creative side. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I'm not telling you all this because I want to talk about myself, but it's important to see how things evolve, how you change, how you take up a situation and make the most of it or not make the most of it, and so on. And then as it turned, my personal life changed, and I ended up in New York. I was beginning to get sick and tired of seeing violence on screen, which is something very important that I want to address. And Hollywood is full of violence on screen. Every movie that quote unquote sells or is commercial is about violence. Violence against women, violence against, let's kill, let's, torture, let's, a movie poster, any given movie poster, it has to have a gun, it has to have a Kalashnikov, it has to have a dagger with blood streaming down. And I'm like, we're seeing this all the time. And then we are surprised at all the killings that are happening around us. The movie industry has a responsibility. And because at any given moment, our children, if not ourselves, we are constantly in front of a screen, and the visual element is very powerful, very powerful. It's like we are bombarded with images, and people say, well, no, not really. I used to play with the wooden guns when I was a kid. I didn't become a criminal. That's different. That's different. This is real. It desensitizes us. You see a dead body, you walk by it because you've seen it so much on screen. You don't care anymore. It's not the same thing. So the responsibility. And then I felt I got to do something about this because a personal tragedy happened where my first cousin and my uncle were stabbed to death in Egypt as a result of a religious hate crime by the next door neighbor. So it was coming to the 10th anniversary of their death, And I felt I need to commemorate this by something meaningful. So put together my disgust of all these violent visuals, plus the violence that I had suddenly in my life, put them two together and created the Socially Relevant Film Festival in New York. We are now going on our 4th year, and up till now we have screened 157 films from 35 countries. A lot of them are Armenian films. I do put an emphasis. It's not an Armenian festival, but I kind of slide them in where possible. And the emphasis is about social issues, human interest stories, shorts, documentaries, feature-length films, and scripts. And I want to make a difference in my own little way. Everybody should feel like, who am I? I'm not big enough. I don't own Academy Awards or Pixar or whoever or whatever. Doesn't matter. Whatever you are, whoever you are, wherever you are, you can make a difference. The one difference you can make by not buying a ticket and going to see a violent movie. That's first difference, you know? And the second difference you can make, buying a ticket and coming to see a film at the Socially Relevant Film Festival. So anyway, I don't want to take it over. So there are other points, but I'm sure they're going to come up in the discussion. So I'll...
Thank you, Nora. I'm wondering, Sona, you're from the television point of view, and you're a different sector of the entertainment industry. Do you describe to us your path, the way that you got to the work, you know, how you got your job, if you don't mind?
Sure.
Because I think there's some people here that it would be interested, and how easy it is or difficult it is to enter the television entertainment industry.
Difficult. Well, I tell this to people all the time who ask me about breaking into television. I think that the best thing I did when I was in college was just intern anywhere I got an internship. And eventually I interned at NBC. Then that turned into me getting a recommendation for the PAGE program, which I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but it's for graduates, and it's just, you wear this awful polyester uniform and you give tours of the lot and everything. And it's, and then that is sort of a segue into you hopefully getting a job. So I lucked out and I got a job in the events department. And when I was in the events department, one of my main jobs was to travel a lot of the casts that we had to different press events. And so one of them was I had to fly out the whole SNL cast to LA for a press conference. And so when I was doing that, I was working with the publicist on Conan's late night show. And then when I heard Conan was moving out to LA, people always ask me, this is really, I mean, this goes to what Nora was saying about just sort of manifesting your own thing by just saying it out loud. When people asked me what I was going to do after NBC, I just was very like, I'm going to work for Conan O'Brien when he moves to LA. Like I said it very matter-of-factly. I was just like, I'm going to work for Conan. I remember I was talking to a lot of people at NBC about working for him, and what eventually happened was I applied for a production assistant job, which is sort of a step above an intern. And then they looked at my resume and they thought I was too qualified, I guess, to be a production assistant. So they just called me and they said, we're going to have you interview to be Conan's assistant. I mean, would you be okay with that? And I was like, yes, I would be absolutely fine with that.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's really, it was very weird. And then, so I interviewed. I mean, that's basically what it was. I mean, I lucked out, and I wish I had more guidance, but for me, it was a lot of luck, and it was a lot of timing. I mean, his assistant before me was with him for 13 years. And so she just, the only reason the job became open was because she didn't want to move to LA. So I just lucked out. I kind of snuck in there when I could. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it was for me in terms of how I got to where I am. I mean, it's been almost 8 years. I thought I was going to be at the job for 2 tops. And then 8 years later, I have no intentions of leaving. I think that When people ask about how the Armenia episode came about, Conan traveled to Cuba in February of 2015, and he really enjoyed the international travel experience. And so we'd have meetings, and people would write down lists of all these different countries that he'd want to go to, that we could go to. We just went to Germany, we went to South Korea. People were talking about Japan. People were talking about Russia. I mean, they were throwing out all these countries. And I just remember Conan was like, "Why don't we take Sona to Armenia?" And I was like, "What? Okay, let's do that. Let's go to Armenia." And that this is where I give Conan the credit. I mean, it's very hard for me to hide that I'm Armenian. I mean, he heard me speak to my grandma on the phone a lot of times. Anytime, like I have an eye problem right now, it's like a little bit of a swelling, so I put a tea bag on it, which is, I grew up thinking anytime you had a problem with your eye, you just put a tea bag on it. So I mean, my culture just sort of seeped out, and it's very hard for it not to seep out. It's very hard for me not to talk about it or to talk about where I come from, and I think that sort of subconsciously got into his head so that when he thought about where we could go next, Armenia was just sort of something that seemed intriguing to him. So, I'm very lucky to work with people who are open-minded. I would say that, I wish I could take more credit for the episode, but it was mostly non-Armenians. I mean, the second we decide where to go, our research team researches everything about the country. Our writers learn everything about the country. I joke that our head writer, Mike Sweeney, is more Armenian than I am at this point because he just knows everything about Armenia. And then, during the editing process, it's completely out of my hands. So I had no idea how the episode would turn out. I had one note, which was they said that my family immigrated to Glendale. And I said, we didn't immigrate to Glendale. We immigrated to Montebello. So I just changed that one point. We compromised and said Los Angeles. But I guess that's all I can say about how I got to where I am and how the episode just sort of came about. But, it's a mixture of me just being very sort of open about who I am and where I come from. And then, people just sort of responded to that. I think it was a good mixture of people who are really open-minded that I work with. And also that I was just constantly being like, I'm Armenian. Did you guys know I'm Armenian? I'm Armenian.
So, I mean, this does raise the issue. I'm noticing this, and it may just be me, that there's a generational thing here that my generation, I'm 55, an Armenian woman going into entertainment was not the first choice of most parents.
Right.
And my mother still is asking if I don't want to go to law school. But for your generation, and Anush, I'm going to pass over to you. You do represent a younger generation. What things are different for you working in entertainment? We were talking, for instance, about marketing and branding and the digital, social media, all these aspects which have a different spin.
Well, a little bit about me. I actually got the job at The Hollywood Reporter because 6 years ago in San Francisco at the AO conference, I was following a mentor of mine. I had never met her before. Her name was Anna Magzanian. She was the VP of marketing at the LA Times. And I heard her speak on this panel. I think it was about like marketing and media or something. And I was just so intrigued because there weren't a lot. I mean, there's really not that many Armenians in entertainment. And it's such a, interesting industry. And you think it's this like star-studded, exciting, behind the scenes sort of thing. So after she spoke on the panel, I went up to her and I said, Anna, I like Sona. I actually interned at Sony Pictures before I had met Anna. So I told her, this is what I've done. And I'm so intrigued by your journey. And she was born in Armenia and now she's, running the LA Times. I was like, I want to work for you. That's it. I just went up to her at the lunch and I said, I want to work for you. And she said, I don't have any openings right now, but come back to me in a couple years and, get some more experience. So 2 years later, after I got my master's, I LinkedIn her. So, social media. I started following her on Facebook, on Instagram, and I was following her career. She had left the LA Times and went to iHeartRadio. And then from iHeartRadio, she went to the Hollywood Reporter. And I messaged her on LinkedIn and I said, I'd like to work for you at the Hollywood Reporter. She's like, we don't have any openings right now. And I was like, okay, well, I still want to work for you. She's like, okay, well, send me your resume. So anyways, long story short, she hired me to be her assistant. And I had never had any experience in the entertainment industry before. So thank you to AOA for, opening that door for me. But in terms of women in entertainment and specifically Armenian women in entertainment, every year I produce a breakfast for 500 of the most powerful women in entertainment. It's in December, and Hollywood never stops. But this Wednesday morning, when this list comes out of the top 100 women in entertainment, Hollywood stops and they come to this breakfast. And for the past 2 decades, we've ranked the list. So the number 1 woman and the number 99th woman in entertainment. And this last year, we decided, well, not myself, but the editorial team decided that we're not going to rank this list anymore. So why are we not going to rank this list anymore? Because it's not a competition, especially with women in this industry, because like Tenny said and all of us said, there's not a lot of us. So we have to work together. And instead of ranking each other, let's become this like power squad, right? So why don't we go to lunch and why don't we talk about what you do and what I do and let's learn about it. Even though I'm not in filmmaking, even though I'm not in television, I'm sure Sona and I or Carla and I can get together and we can somehow make something happen. And of course, it all leads to also the genocide. And how can we, as these small women in entertainment, somehow go back to our roots and make sure that this is part of our journey too. So that's sort of what happened, and that's how I got this position. And yeah.
Well, I think we were talking amongst us, and one theme was the whole issue of mentoring. And Catherine mentioned mentoring within Pixar, how the organization tries to mentor people within the organization. Once a week, I would say on average, I will either get, or the foundation I work for, the Armenian Film Foundation, we will get a request from either a filmmaker or somebody who has an idea about a story saying, how can I advance this? And I know that probably all of you have been approached by people who want to enter the industry who are either Armenian or women or both. And I think that there has to be this is my personal opinion, I'm throwing out to you and to the audience, that we need to have a better way of addressing this demand. Instead of seeing it as a hindrance or something that, oh dear, another person who wants to get in the industry, that it instead should be a way of saying, this is how we get our stories out there. We should be fostering this talent. We should be mentoring people, and especially young people who are wanting advice about how to get into the industry. We should be putting money towards this, creating a pool of funds that can help people, if they don't know what they're doing, how to write a treatment. So many people don't know how much things cost. They don't even know how to go about, budgeting what it is they're proposing. And all of these things are things that we can do to support this energy. And it's like, I see it as athletics. How do you get star tennis players? You have to build a lot of tennis courts and fund tennis and encourage kids to play tennis or whatever sport it is. The infrastructure has to be there. And I think traditionally the Armenian community has put that effort, rightfully, into things like schools and churches, right? But a part of our maturing and being stronger is to not see them as mutually exclusive things, that we can do this too. We can put money into, whether you see it as mentoring, I see it as arts funding, that this is something that will encourage this talent, which is there. We have about a half an hour for questions, where everybody is on time here. Yep. Yes, would you like to? Yes, go ahead. Yes, please do.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is that there is a very interesting study about women pioneers in film. And when Hollywood started, there were many more women who were producing writing, directing, and doing all those things, like Mary Pickford, Frances Marion, Mary Staples. I mean, the list is long, and there is an Armenian there. There is Nina Arajanova. Shutko is her Russian name. And she wrote the script of Eisenstein's Battlestar Potemkin. Very interesting. So these women, this is a period, we're talking about 1919, 1920, early 20s and all that. So where did we go wrong? What did we do that suddenly the men took it over? So suddenly they realized, wait a minute, there is a thing here, there is a medium here that has a lot of power, has a lot of reach, and it's in the women's hands. So we need to convince them somehow they're not good enough. They should just be pretty faces and not knock into the furniture and just sit there and not say much. And the men took it over. So we should reclaim our place. That's one thing we really need to do. And the more women worked in the film industry back then. They were like 200 on this website. That it's a study that done by Jane Gaines from Columbia University. There are 223 pioneer women in film way back at the beginnings of Hollywood. So let's go back and see what happened and how we can come back to that period. And so basically that's
very
what
interesting.
I wanted to say.
Questions we have, yes. Here.
Hi, my name is Christina Azarian. I study music business and film scoring at Berklee College of Music here. It's my last year. I have an entire notebook of questions, but it's okay. We'll talk after. I interned in Los Angeles this summer, and I'm planning to move there next year. And I was there this summer without knowing anybody there, and I didn't meet any Armenians in the industry. So this happening right now, it's so inspiring to see Armenian women in the industry, and also women who have not lost touch with social causes, because that's something I'm passionate about as well. Going there and starting from scratch, I want your advice on how to do that without, I want to go there on my own, get a job, support myself, but not just settle for whatever job will make money, because I feel like I'll get lost and I'll forget, I won't forget, but I want to be able to induce change, and I don't want to just take a job that's going to support me because it's what I can find. I'm really glad I found you guys. But I want to know what you guys suggest in terms of just starting from scratch and maintaining focus to get where you guys are.
Okay. So before I worked at the Hollywood Reporter, I was working at USC, the university, and I was planning all their alumni reunions and stuff. And when I got into the entertainment industry, I took a pay cut. I took a title change. I went down. So I think when you do something that you're passionate about and that you really, really want to get into, it really doesn't matter like how much you're making. You'll get to where you want to be eventually. It might take a little bit of time, especially in this industry. You have to have really thick skin. And before I started at the Hollywood Reporter, I didn't. And when I interviewed, I was like a nervous wreck, But you have to have really thick skin. And one piece of advice that I can give you is that you're never like too good for any job that they give you, and to sort of do above and beyond what your job description is. So, if you're in the marketing department and sales is having a sales meeting, maybe go into the sales meeting and see what they're trying to sell, or maybe go work an event and stuff gift bags. Not that it's like glamorous or fun, but that's where you really learn things, and that's where you gain respect from people above that are sort of watching and realizing like you've become a sponge, and you're you're absorbing all of this information that maybe you didn't think you would want to learn about or know about, but you do.
So to answer that, your question, help you here. I know a lot of people who start off, including myself, who weren't doing what they do now. So I started off with a background in politics and had nothing to do with communications. And I kind of just fell into it. and learning my way through it. And just kind of like what Anush said, you just end up doing things that you never thought you would do and end up going where you never thought you'd end up. I know an Oscar-winning composer who started off as a publicist working at Universal, who had, aspirations to go into music, but was working in a publicity marketing department and worked his way through, and now is probably one of the most renowned composers in the industry. So basically, you talk to everyone you know, you do whatever you can, and you spread, you make connections. I got into my job at the Academy after having worked in communications. I took an extension course in entertainment because I didn't know anyone in entertainment. I lived in LA, moved to Washington, and then moved back to LA and wanted to meet people in entertainment. And I took this extension course, just, thought, why not? And during the course, I met with people in the industry and made a point to talk to every single person in that course. And months later, somebody just called me from the Academy and said, hey, do you want to come in and talk to us? And that was 11 years ago. So you just never know one conversation with somebody where it can lead you. So just talk to anyone that you can, network as much as you can. It's so key. And I think we've met before. I think we have. I was remembering your face. I think we know each other.
They'll be available afterwards as well. Anybody else? Go ahead.
I want to say something about that to reiterate what you already said. It's about not losing the focus of what it is that you want to do. In the meantime, there might be other hurdles. You might do something else. You might go wash cars, or or whatever it takes, if you have to support yourself in that way. But then don't lose the focus, and don't think because for 3 months you're washing cars that that's it, you're done, you're finished, you're below your whatever you thought dreams or whatever else that you had for yourself. It never goes away. It all comes back in the end and synthesizes into whatever it's supposed to be. So if two things I can say to describe this is patience and resilience. Mm-hmm. Never give up. Never give up. That's another thing my dad taught me. Oh my God, he's here.
Oh, I would just add, because this came up in several conversations today, that the entertainment business, and this is a generalization, but it does eat up young talent and energy, because the young people have the energy and the talent. You don't necessarily have a family life. Your time is totally available. The entertainment industry needs you, as it were. So it's really, if you see it as a matter of you matching up to they're the supply and you're the demand, or the other way around.
Absolutely.
So you have to really look at it very strategically. And I say to people, go to the companies you want to work for and try to meet people working there to get advice, and so that they get to know you. So when we need to get people to work on productions, it's suddenly a big rush. You need people quickly. You want to get people you know or you trust. And then you're suddenly looking at your files or your digital files or whatever and saying, who did I meet who conforms to those specifications? So you want to be that person. But you have to think about who you want to work for and try to meet people. And that's your job, to get a job. Yeah, your job is to get a job.
Yeah. Do your homework otherwise. Find out about them. Find out about what takes them. And it's just like one of my acting professors used to say, when you go into an audition, you're the one who's rushing in with that vial in your hand that has the cure they are waiting for. Otherwise, they're dying,
So that's a good way of thinking
isn't
about
that a good...
Questions?
Yeah.
Questions?
Here it is. I got it.
Questions? Yes.
First, go UC Irvine. Second, just another comment. Sona, the Conan episode in Armenia brought so much joy to me and my family. I have never laughed so hard in my life in tears. So
Thank you very much.
I actually am going to watch it over and over again now. As we've had our discussions throughout the day, the one word that keeps coming to my mind is amot. And I don't know why. Shameful, right? For those who don't know. And I remember when I was 3, I wanted to raise my hand and ask a question in a concert. And my dad, actually, I vividly remember my dad tried to like pull my hand down. He's like, no, don't make any attention. And then I don't bring any attention to you. And I remember my grandmother, who was just, God bless her soul, half my height. Laura, be very careful how you are perceived in the environment. Amote, gamat, be careful, right? So so in a way, I felt like that stifled my authentic self. And the thing that I'm hearing here, especially in the entertainment industry, is you kind of have to be your authentic self in order to be able to succeed in the industry. Because if you're stifling that, you're not going to be able to succeed. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts around your authentic self and then trying to pair the whole, amot thought that is kind of in the back of our minds from a cultural perspective, right? That kind of haunts me, I guess.
It's an excellent question. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Probably because I work with someone who's very Irish Catholic and is very not so. Yeah. What I've found after all the time I've been working in television is women can sometimes get intimidated. I mean, just sort of echoing your sentiment. But what I've found out is men are a little afraid of women sometimes. And it just takes a woman to voice her opinion, to be assertive, to just sort of break that kind of amotutun they have at first. Do you know what I mean? Is amotutun a word even? Okay. Sorry. It took me a while to sort of come into my own. I think when I first started, it was a mixture of me thinking I was inexperienced and a mixture of me just being very timid, like a very timid person. But I'm not a timid person. I'm incredibly just sort of loud and somewhat abrasive, some people would say. But I think that once I sort of came into my own, it's easier to do it. Once you sort of break that seal, it's easier to just be who you are. And, now I'm at the point now where if Conan asks me to make a sandwich, I'm like, I'm not making you a sandwich, but it's my job to make him a sandwich. But I've sort of, and I think that's how my job has evolved from being someone who's in an administrative role to kind of just being in a bigger role than that, was just because I was able to just sort of be myself. And so I think it's very important for women to just who they are. They shouldn't be afraid of it and should just kind of like come into it in a very confident manner. I think it makes a huge, huge difference.
I want to say something about being shy. When I was growing up, I was extremely shy. Maybe it's hard to believe now. I am having difficulty believing that I was that shy little girl who would sit in the corner, not say anything. And I remember distinctly the day that changed. When I was at LSE, London School of Economics, doing my master's degree, we had seminars and so on and so forth. And one day, during a seminar, a very interesting discussion was going on. And I wanted to say something, which was a point that I was trying to bring in the discussion. And I wanted to raise my hand, but my hand wouldn't go up. And I was like, I was so shy, my hand wouldn't go up. And then 2 seconds later, somebody else brought up the point that I was about to bring up. And the discussion turned all around that because it was a very important issue that that point brought up. And I went home and I said to myself, I will never, ever be shy again. And I think it's a matter of telling yourself again, the mirror, hello, I'm not going to be shy. That's it. That's all it takes. Mentality. Change your mindset. Say to yourself, my dad and my grandma were coming from a different perspective. I am not going to take that perspective. I'm going to develop my own. My own tells me not to be shy. At first, you might go overboard, and then you'll find your right way. So that's all I can say.
I think it's also the environment that you're in. And so when I was talking about that earlier with Conan, it's the environment, the job that you're in, and the safety that you feel. We talked about that also with Linda Hill, I believe. She was talking about safety and security that you feel. In my work environment, currently, it's a very safe, secure, creative. So you feel that you can express and you're secure in the creativity and you're confident and you can feel that you can, I can certainly be very Armenian, and they know that, I'm Armenian and I can express, talk about the food, the culture. I went to Armenia April 24th, a year ago, for the 100th anniversary, and I was very open in discussing the trip and discussing, why I was going and that Kim Kardashian was going and what happened and when Conan had, gone. So it was very open, and everybody there understood, and, they shared their ethnic backgrounds or, whatever their perceptions was. So it's very important that you feel a sense of security and creativity. And in a job, especially with women, I am very lucky that I have a lot of women around me. My CEO is a female. My staff have a lot of women. There are a couple of men that sometimes may feel a little bit intimidated when you've got a lot of women around you. So that it shifts. The balance kind of shifts sometimes, but that helps a lot. Previous to the CEO, though, it was a very male-dominated, kind of the old school boys network where it wasn't like that, and the tone was very different, and it was a bit hindered where people weren't as expressive. So the shift in the organization has changed quite positively for me anyway, and for my team. And the team and the dynamic has positively been influenced in the growth in the team, and my team specifically, and the work and the efficiency of the work and the productivity has helped tremendously. And I mean, just for promotions and just everything. So it's very helpful to have that kind of ability to express yourself in everything that you do, both personally and professionally, when you can, get beyond the whole amot thing. Yeah.
I also, I think that as mothers, grandmothers, aunts, someone said earlier, my mom wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor. I think it's important to encourage your daughters, granddaughters to do what they want, because if you're not passionate about something, then you're not going to be happy, and, you're not going to want to go to work. So, for example, like I'd come home sometimes when I first started working, I'd be like, ugh, Bob, I had to go get so-and-so's dry cleaning. Like annoyed that I had to do that, or ugh, I had to go get so-and-so coffee. And instead of being like, you shouldn't be doing that, like, you went to school and you got a master's, he was like, it's okay. Like, you'll make your way up. So it's important for not only to encourage yourself, but to encourage the women and the important women in your life, because you have to start somewhere, and it's important to have that family backing.
And that's an excellent point. Anusha's point is excellent, because we traditionally as a culture have encouraged certain professions for our kids. We don't necessarily encourage art and entertainment. We encourage, very traditional professions. And it's, wise to look at, especially in entertainment, there's a much broader avenues, beyond acting and directing and writing. There's avenues in animation, there's avenues in visual effects, there's that, you can go in composing, you can take, routes in costume design. And a lot of these fields, have math backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, technology backgrounds that are very lucrative and have great, tenures in your profession. So those are really key. And it'd be really encouraging to, push your kids, if they're interested in this, to really guide them towards that, to kind of get beyond the traditional fields that, we tend to push our children towards.
And I would just add, and I'll take the question there, that if you go to Armenia, you might notice that a lot of the journalists or the producers in TV and public radio are women. Yep. And now they're not necessarily the executives, and they're not necessarily the directors of the films, but they are the producers and the support people, and a lot of the creative stuff is coming from women. And I've asked about this. It's so noticeable when you're there. And the men there think it's a woman's job. It's a woman's job to do all that work. Why? They should just stand there and, direct the orchestra. They're going to do all the work. But what it says to me is that there is a skill set there. There's some really good work being done in Armenia by Armenian women. And so I like to think that one day those women are going to have a voice too.
That's a very interesting point. I want to say something about that. Just before coming here, like on Wednesday night, I was at a panel at the Women Make Movies. It's a women-run organization. And the guests were two women who had just made a documentary film called Letters from Baghdad. It's coming out very soon. You're going to hear about it. It is premiering at Doc NYC, and then it's going to go around. It's it's the life story of Gertrude Bell and how important she was in the British Empire and during the First World War and so on. And the movie starts with some fantastic documentary footage. And I was saying, oh, I wish this was an Armenian story, which you feel like we have these stories. We should be able to tell them. And these two women, this was a first film for both of them. One produced a bunch of other films for other people, and the other one was an editor. And they teamed up together. They made this film. It took them 3 years, but they got National Endowment of the Humanities grant. It was just under $1 million budget. But it's a documentary, so we should not rule out the power of the documentary films. We are so hung up about telling our genocide story through the big, huge feature film that's going to change it all and make it all. It doesn't work that way. If you have $10, make a movie for $10. It can be done, by the way. I did mine for well, no, not $10, but anyway. So the promise, we were talking about the promise. I recently had the opportunity to work on the promise for voiceover, as a voiceover actor, because there was a lot of dialogue that had to be done in Armenian, in Turkish, in French, in Arabic, and I speak all those languages. And as an actor, I was called upon to do some of that work. And it's wonderful. It's really a good movie, but it doesn't have distribution yet. Where are the Armenians in the distribution companies already placed? We haven't done our homework, so that when the movie comes out, it already is in the market. The Turks are going and writing bad things about the movie. Where are the Armenians who are writing the counter reviews? I worked on there's another surprise coming up your way. It's called The Ottoman Lieutenant. It's directed by Joseph Rubin, and I worked on that as well as a voiceover actor. It's a beautiful story about an American nurse from Philadelphia who goes to the Ottoman Empire during the genocide to give her services against her family's wish. Where are you going, girl? Don't do that. You're alone, and so on and so forth. She picks up and goes. She falls in love with a Turkish Ottoman lieutenant, basically. And he dies in the war, and then she meets up an Armenian, and the whole story shifts, and it tells about the genocide. It's not made by Armenians, not by an Armenian. It's coming out soon. And it used to be called, funnily enough, The Mountain and the Stones. And when we were doing the voiceover ADR director said, that's a bad title. Nobody seems to be relating to that. And they don't know what to call it. So I said, why don't you call it The Ottoman Lieutenant? And he goes, wow, that sounds fantastic. And I go, yeah, like the French lieutenant, the Ottoman lieutenant. And then I forgot about it. I completely forgot about it. I said, who's going to notice the ADR actor is saying something? Who's going to take note of that? Next thing I know, I'm researching the movie on IMDb. It is called The Ottoman Lieutenant.
Wow, wow. There was a question. Yes.
Additionally, within what you were saying about Kim Kardashian and sort of people scurrying away from her. I mean, I've been a Kim Kardashian fan since the day one. So, but within that construct, right? When we think about the promise, and then we think about the good that Kim Kardashian has done, but perhaps she's not, welcome. I would love sort of some comments from the panel on how within your roles we can inspire more traditional or more expected, more accepted dialogue, and then also maybe ones that are a little bit more out there but still equally relevant. I just love your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll just say about Kim Kardashian as her wingman for the night, that it was one of the most frightening experiences I had because of the people coming at us. And we were both of small stature. She's a little more buxom. But she knew how to handle it in the most gracious way. And she is actually a very softly spoken, reserved energy. And she dealt with each and every person who wanted to have their picture taken. She showed people were getting nervous. Their hands were shaking. They wanted to take a photograph with their phones, and they were getting all nervous. She helped them. So I thought she knows how to present herself in the public, how to interact with the public, and she wanted to do something for the Armenian community, but didn't know in what way she should. The family had been making some comments about Syrian Armenians. It hadn't gone over well, so they didn't quite know how to do it. And so I think it was the community's fault for not somehow reaching out to her. And once that bridge was made, look how well it went. So this is where we heard the word inclusion. We have to be inclusive in our community. And we have to, from diaspora to Hayastan, whatever, we have to be inclusive. We have to think out of the box. We have to put our money in a more creative way towards helping our artists. And we have to see that as an investment. That's my opinion.
Totally.
What do you think?
Absolutely, and we shouldn't pass judgments. I mean, you like Kim Kardashian, you don't like Kim Kardashian, that's not the point. If you don't like what she's doing, maybe you should go and educate her about the Armenian issues like you have done, and use the celebrity status that she has, because you don't become who she is by being stupid. I don't think so. She has built an empire. It's business. She knows how to run it. She must be doing something right. So let's learn from the part that she's doing right and forget about all the judgments. And then she's the one who stood up and passed a full page ad in the new. Where are the rich Armenians who should have and would have and could have done that? She's the one who did it. The others are writing checks to Vehapar to build a church.
Right. Okay. There we are. I just want to say, Nora.
I'm leaving now. I'm leaving.
That's okay. I think it's funny. I just want you to remember this. Verharpar, Kim Kardashian. Verharpar, Kim Kardashian. Go ahead, Anu.
Actually, I have something to say about that. So, did everyone see the ad in the New York Times? Okay. So, Kim didn't pay for that ad at all. It was a group of Armenians that, through the Armenian Educational Foundation, decided to come together and publish the ad. So we can't, I am very proud of Kim for writing that, because she did that all by herself, but it's our responsibility to approach her and go to her. And you're right, not put all of our money in, the Armenian church or a school or whatever. Like, you have to realize that she does have this platform, and that we as Armenians, as much as we like her, we don't like her. She does have 60 million followers on Instagram. So let's all donate $5 and put an ad in the LA Times now. Or let's all put it in the Boston Globe or whatever it is. I don't know. Sorry. But what I'm saying is that, there's so few of us that instead of criticizing each other, let's come together and let's give her another platform and let's approach her about something else. Because from that one article, they got millions and millions of dollars worth of PR. Yeah, there was like 25 articles written about that one article, so or ad.
We have about what, 2 or 5 minutes left, Howie? Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. Well, let's have one final question, and then we'll all be available outside. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ani Katchian, and I'm involved in numerous Armenian organizations, and I've actually been to Armenia a couple of times. People don't know this, but my mother passed away, and Robert Kardashian passed away, and they would share the same first cousin. So there is a connection. I've always found it a little bit awkward, but I don't know how to make the bridge. But if she would like to make a bridge with a family member, I'm putting it out there.
There we are. That is why there is the Armenian International Women's Association.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I want to say something before we close it or have another question or something like that. Mentorship came up a lot, and AWA, as a Armenian Women's International Organization, should maybe or could or is free to, as they say nowadays in industry, you're free to do this, but basically it means do it. Create a list of mentorship. Like, for example, from the London School of Economics, we have that on the website, alumni website. You go there. Some alumni have put their names, and I would love to mentor in this field, that field, whatever. And then students contact them, and then a mentorship is established. So maybe that's one thing AWA can do immediately, right next week after you have slept a little bit. So to create on the website so we can make connections. The other thing is maybe create a fund for Armenian women, like the example I gave with Letters from Baghdad, to make documentaries. Because documentaries are shorter, easier to make relatively, of course. It depends on what we are talking about. They're less expensive, and there is a market for it. There are television stations that are hungry for documentaries. The world, not just America, all over the world. And that's one way of telling our story and making it more credible, because it's not fiction. We're not telling fiction stories. We're showing documents. It's real. And the other thing is, whoever would like, maybe another suggestion to AWA, whoever is here, whoever would like to share their emails already, we should start a group going, so that this conversation does not end on Sunday morning with the breakfast, but is continued. And whoever would like to reach me, I have, outside we have some of the flyers from the festival. I would be more than happy to create a special discount code if there are filmmakers to use the AWA. Let's put hashtag AWA25, and I will create. Yeah, I will. Is that the right one? Yeah. And I will create a special code on Film Freeway so that if you have a film and you want to submit it, you get a 50% discount. I should have said 25 because it's AWA 25, but I'm doubling it. So as a gesture, and things like that. So already we start positive, active, real things going.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity. We're going to be outside, but to thank our panelists. Thank you.
And thank you, Carla, for the excellent introduction to the panel. Thank you. Excellent. This was an enlightening panel. Sorry?
I just want to say really one quick thing.
Okay, go ahead, and then I want to say something about mentorship.
Thank you, all of you.
Put microphone.
My name is Sarah Janjigi-Interfero, and I'm a board member. And I just want to thank you all for coming and speaking, but also for your idea. And on the docket is a mentoring program. And we are really excited about this. So you will be hearing more about it. And all of you that want to be part of it, I please ask you to do so.
Thank you, Sarah. And the idea about mentoring, and please use those idea sheets, fill them in. We are seriously going to consider them. And as far as the mentoring, we need permission to share your emails, and that is the one drawback that has held us back for all these years. So this time, I think you will be getting an email saying if you wish to be on that list, therefore you can then please respond to those emails, and we can then pass it around to all of the mentors that we can have and we can share. Ladies and the gentlemen, we have a meet and greet, half an hour outside. Meet all the speakers. We've got Catherine out here. We've got, I believe, Linda Melkonian. We've got Sharon Bernarzian. We still have people outside. Meet and greet. Don't forget tonight at the Regatta Bar at 7 p.m.